And then admit all. Okay. Aloha, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're gonna wait a few minutes to see if there's any last minute stragglers, and then we're gonna get started. But we ask that if you're not on mute, to please put yourself on mute so we don't get any feedback. Thank you. Okay, it's 6:32 p.m. and we're gonna get started to be respectful of everyone's time. But we just wanted to thank each and every one of you for joining us. My name is Jacob Aki, and I'm the director of communications for the Hawaii State Senate. And tonight we are hosting this town hall. This event is being hosted by Senator Gil Riviere, Representative Lisa Kitagawa, and Councilmember Heidi Tsuneyoshi. Um, Before we get started, just wanted to go over some of our Zoom ground rules. As I said previously, if you're not on mute, to please put yourself on mute so we don't get any feedback. And we will have a question and answer period. And to ask a question, we're gonna ask that you put your question or comment in the chat. We have some of our legislative staff who will be monitoring the chat feeds both here on Zoom and on Facebook. And we're going to try our best to get all of your questions answered. So we can get started, and I'll hand the floor off to Senator Gil Riviere. Senator.
Thank you, Jacob, and thanks to everybody who logged in tonight. It's great when people take time to pay attention to what's going on over at the legislature and at City Hall. So thanks for tuning in tonight. We had a kind of a robust discussion last night. We're doing a series of town halls around the district, and tonight we want to focus in the Ko'olapoko part of our district, with where the three of us are all representing. Last night we talked a lot about flooding, and I know there was some flooding, just about everywhere. So if anybody has questions tonight about that, please feel free to ask that when we get to the question and answers. We're not bringing in the guest speakers on that specific subject tonight, but we will have them back again tomorrow if you'd like to come in and join in on a meeting that's going to be more focused on Haleiwa side tomorrow evening. But what I wanted to do tonight is just go over where we are in the legislative process. We have a short session this year. We're going to end a week early. We're going to end at the end of April, so there's only 1 month left, which means that at this point, most of the bills have been kind of winnowed away. There's a lot of big ideas when we begin the legislative session, and some of them are kind of bad ideas and controversial, and a lot of those don't quite make it this far. I just wanted to highlight a few of the measures that are still alive. It's a rather, after all the crazy bills fade away, it can become rather less dramatic, shall I say, on the bills that actually survive. But some of the bills that I think that are relevant, especially for the Kahaluu area, where I know there's a lot of residents who have often talked about undergrounding utilities. You know, the big telephone poles and the wires going across, blocking people's views has long been a concern for a lot of people when we talk about our view planes and things. So I note that House Bill 78 is still alive, and that is a bill that would allow the undergrounding of utilities without creating a whole public utilities commission docket and approval process. It doesn't mean that anything's going to be undergrounded more quickly, but if there's a developer, or if there's an area, or there's people in a position ready to make that happen, that they can do that with one less giant bureaucratic hurdle. So that was kind of neat. The House bill, and all of these bills have either crossed the Senate to the House, or the Senate or the House to the Senate, and they've made it into the final committee. So in the final, this next week, we're going to, it'll be the final votes for just about every bill. And then it'll go into a week or two of reconciliation between the House and the Senate. And then that will be the final results. But House Bill 247, and there's a Senate version too that was moving, would provide some extra protections for agriculture lands. We have a big problem around much of the state where people buy agriculture land and then they turn it into a kind of de facto agricultural subdivisions, and they're nothing more than just fancy estates and not a whole lot of agriculture going on. So there was an act, there was a bill and a task force last year that created a working group to make recommendations, and it addresses the condominiumization. So when you take an ag parcel and you declare it to be a condominium and then you sell off pieces of it, a lot of people think they can build houses on that, and it becomes a kind of a cat and mouse game trying to regulate that. So that bill, I think, is moving forward, and I think that would be good for those of us who are trying to keep the country. There's another bill regarding real estate investment trusts. There are a lot of these companies, real estate investment trusts, that own a lot of commercial real estate in Hawaii, and they're owned by people throughout the country. Well, taxes are paid by the individuals wherever they live. The taxes are not paid in Hawaii. So we see this large exportation of revenue out of our state for these real estate investment trusts. And there's been efforts in the last several years to provide what we think is probably an equitable taxing regimen for that. And there's a bill that's going now that will require the REITs to provide detailed reporting so we can get a handle as to what kind of money is going on out there. There's a couple other zoning laws. There's one that's going forward that would prevent, and I'm opposed to this, I voted against it, but it's moving. There's a county, the counties right now have zoning authority. There's a bill going forward that says unless the state mandates a particular study or report, that the county cannot ask for it. And I think that's terribly wrong. I think the counties should have home rule to decide what approval processes are needed. And so this bill, I think, would stomp on the county's ability to make its own ruling. And that's a House Bill 497. So I think that's a misguided overreach of the state telling the counties what to do. And here's one that's of concern, not yet to Oahu, but very well may. There's a state land use classification called rural. And presently, it requires a minimum lot size of 1/2 acre. But this bill would change it to 1/4 acre, which is not much more than 10,000 square feet. So what that means is instead of trying to go through the arduous challenge of reclassifying your land from agriculture to urban, this will incentivize developers to buy agriculture land, go for land classification of rural, and then they'll be able to chop up our agriculture lands into 10,000 square foot lots without as much trouble. And that is a grave concern of mine. So as you know, if you followed the things I vote on and the subjects, I'm very much for supporting our rural economy, keeping our rural nature in the rural areas, in fighting for jobs that are appropriate for that area, such as the Dillingham Airfield, which is on the other side of our district. But there's a threat now that airfield may be shut, and that will wipe out 130 jobs and 11 businesses. And I think that would be a catastrophe. So tune in tomorrow night if you want to learn more about that issue. So I don't want to bore you with an endless supply of bills and things, but a couple more things just to highlight. I mentioned some of the bad bills that have fallen aside. One of them was a tax bill that was going to increase taxes on everything, on high income earners, on the sale of real estate, on capital gains taxes, on conveyance tax, on just about everything. That was Senate Bill 56, and it has died in the House, but That was one that I specifically voted against because I thought in this, in this time of economic trouble, trying to dig our way out by taxing everything that's moving is inappropriate. So I was opposed to that bill. The vote was 24-1 in the Senate, and that bill later died in the House. But I think it was important to take a position to oppose things like that. There was a controversial measure to allow the Office of Hawaiian Affairs to build high-rise and or sell high-rise buildings and residential development in the Kaka'ako Makai area. That was, if you followed that issue, that was about 15 years ago. The community was successful in legislating that no high-rises and no residential development would occur in that coastal area of Honolulu. It's the last coastal area that's not high-rised. And so there is every year now, OHA is coming back in to seek special permission ultimately, because they want special permission only for OHA, only on special lots to be exempt from the law. And so I was very passionate in opposing that. And I welcome your comments if you feel the other way. But that's all. Again, I don't want to bore you too much legislation, but this is the time of year when these things are coming around the corner. And so I will now yield my time and be ready for questions if anyone has any later. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Up next, we have Representative Lisa Kitagawa. Rep.
Thank you, Jacob. And thank you everyone for being here tonight. It's great to see all of you. I'm Lisa Kitagawa. I represent District 48, which includes part of Kaneohe all the way out until part of Waiāhole. And so, I border or I overlap with both Senator Riviere as well as Senator Jarrett Keoho Kalole, and also with Councilmember Tsuneyoshi as well as Councilmember Kia'aina. So if you're not in, if you're in my district but not in Senator or Councilmember Tsuneyoshi's, you can always direct your questions towards me, and I can try to find the answer out for you. But I just wanted to go over a couple of bills that I've introduced that are still alive and that are moving through the legislature. The first one that I wanted to talk about has to do with recycling of solar panels and other sort of battery operated equipment that could be related to solar or those kind of items. And so that the issue actually came up last year at a Kahaluu neighborhood board. And so someone had asked me about it. I think he's on here, John Rapoon. And so we started talking about it and I decided, okay, let's do some research. And so we introduced a bill on it last year. Because of the pandemic, it died. So we reintroduced it this year and it's been moving through the legislature. So what the bill really does is it asks for a study between the State Energy Office as well as the Department of Health to look at best practices to do disposal and recycling of discarded clean energy products such as solar panels in the state. So currently right now, solar panels, they have a lifespan of about 30 years or so. When we first started doing solar paneling was about 30 years ago almost. And so most of those are kind of come up on their lifespan. And so the question then becomes, what do we do with all the solar panels that need to be replaced that are on people's homes? And we really shouldn't be throwing it in our landfills because it has material in it that's not safe. And so looking at what are we going to do next as the next steps. And so this study would kind of look at best practices and figure out how we can move forward on that. So I'm really excited about that bill. I'm hoping it makes its way through. It's waiting for a hearing in the Senate Ways and Means Committee. But that's one of the bills that I've introduced that's still alive. The other one that I've introduced, I'm also very passionate about. It's related to trauma-informed education. And this is something that I also introduced last year, but because of the pandemic, it didn't make it. But this year I've reintroduced it, and it's creating a pilot program for 3 years in the Castle Complex, Kailua, and Kalaheo Complex areas to create trauma-informed education schools. So if you're not informed with or aware of what trauma-informed education is, it's really providing the skills and tools necessary for teachers or administration or staff, and even beyond that, community members as well, to kind of reframe and rechange the way that we address students or people in our community who have challenges or who are going through difficult times. So for example, you may have a child in your classroom at school who has behavioral issues and they are constantly acting out, they're disrupting the class. And oftentimes the teacher, because they may not have the skills necessary or because they have so many other children in their class, will just say, you know, what's wrong with you? Go to the counselor's office or go to the vice principal's office. But what this training would do is provide teachers with the skills needed so that instead of saying what's wrong with you, to say what's going on, what is it that's happening that you might want to talk about. And it's really providing a safe space for kids to be able to share the trauma that's going on in their lives. So we know that kids, especially during the pandemic now, I think it's just increased it, the trauma that kids can experience, whether it's through divorce, homelessness, alcohol abuse, drug abuse. It could even be where their parents are struggling with money right now. It can be a whole bunch of things. And because of that, kids often internalize that trauma and then it comes out as behavioral issues because they're not able to process it or they may not have a trusted adult to share that with. So this pilot project would make sure that all of the schools in the Castle area as well as Kalaheo and Kailua would have the skills necessary to be able to assist those kids and to kind of change the way that we interact with them. And the goal really is to create trauma-informed communities so that as these kids get older, they will also have the skills to be able to recognize trauma and will be able to assist, other people in the community, whether that's their family or their neighbors or just other kids that they may know. So I'm hopeful that this will get passed. It's a pilot project, so it's got to create positive results. There was and in the Nanakuli Waiānai area, they did a trauma-informed education and they saw really great results with reduced absenteeism, higher graduation rates, better teacher retention. And so we're hoping that this pilot project would yield those same results and so that we can hopefully expand it to the entire state. So this is just something that I've been working on, very passionate and interested about. But these are two of the bills that I have that are still alive and moving through the legislature. I also have a couple of resolutions looking at studying APRNs and gaps in healthcare and how we can improve our healthcare access, especially in rural communities and on neighbor islands. But I'm open to any questions you might have. You can put them in the chat box. And as Senator said, we'll be happy to answer them after we go through these introductions. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Rep. And last but not least, we have Councilmember Heidi Tsuneyoshi, who represents Council District 2. Councilmember.
Thank you, Jacob. Just wanted to thank Senator Riviere for coordinating this tonight and Representative Kitagawa for being on as well, and for Jacob for moderating, and to all of you for being here and taking your time to listen to some updates for your community. I did want to first say to all of you and to those of you who may have been affected by the extreme flooding that was in the area, Waiāhole, Waikane, and even areas of Kahaluu that had extreme water rainfall issues. I just wanted to say that I hope you're all coming through the situations that you faced in your residence and properties. And if you have any continuing concerns about what has happened to your property, feel free to call our office. We are still working with the Department of Planning and Permitting to get together property damage reports, which will be useful and helpful for us moving forward to assess what issues you dealt with during the most recent flooding of the area. On the day of when the flooding started, myself and one of my staff were at Kahaluu Regional Park there with families who weren't able to get home. So we do know, and top of mind is the issues that you have when there's flooding in your area, the Waiāhole and Waikane communities and others that really got impacted by the road closures. We are going to be working to make sure that we assess what happened with the recent situation, and we're going to have a joint meeting with all the city departments who have a hand in addressing issues that arise with those kind of weather patterns on April 5th. So we are continuing to move forward and making sure that we do a better job next time alerting the communities when these type of issues arise and help assess and go through the situation as the impacts continue to unfold and develop. So with that, I did want to highlight, as far as legislatively, after all that we've dealt with within the past few weeks with floodings, I did introduce Resolution 21-77, which is requesting the city administration to develop a stream maintenance schedule for city-owned streams and floodways. One of the main issues that I saw going out after the flooding is that we definitely need to address the clearing of our streams and floodways, both city and state. And Senator Riviere and Representative Kitagawa, I look forward for all of us working together to make sure we ensure that city and state area streams and floodways are cleared, so that in the case of these extreme weather patterns that we're going to be having, that there isn't so much of an issue of flooding and having water topple over. And so make sure that we have more flood mitigation efforts in play. So Resolution 2177 was passed out of committee and is moving on to the full council. I also included a budget amendment for $5 million for an island-wide program to clear streams and floodways, knowing that we don't want to just ask legislatively that this is top of mind and a priority for the city. That amendment is still alive and moving through, still in the budget amendments. And so hopeful with that, with this funding, we're able to put our money where our mouth is and focus attention on clearing these streams and floodways in the areas that we know are always prone to these types of situations. And I will also be introducing a resolution to request that the state do the same, so that the city and state, we can both partner and work together and make sure that together we're doing the best job that we can to maintain these streams and floodways. I also wanted to highlight that, as you know, there has been an issue with wind turbines and the siting of turbines close to houses and schools. I did introduce a resolution to increase the setback from houses and schools to a 5-mile setback, and the Department of Planning and Permitting came back with a recommendation that the setback be changed to a 1,500-foot setback. That went to Planning Commission, and after hearing from the representatives from the community about how devastating it was the Kahaluu community to have those wind turbines sited so close to houses and schools, the Planning Commission decided to hear more from the community to find a balance between the resolution's 5-mile setback and the DPP's recommended 1,500-mile setback. So currently we have 60 days to present a different option between the 1,500 and the 5 miles. So our office is working to present another option as far as what is an acceptable setback based on industry standards. And so if you have any input or you have any ideas about what would appropriate setback be from schools and from houses, please let us know. So we'll keep you posted as far as how it moves forward and where the Planning Commission final decision on the final setback comes. So once the Planning Commission makes a recommendation, it'll come back to the council and we'll do further work to make sure that we do have an increase in that setback. And we are going through our city budget right now, and I just wanted to highlight some of the city budget amendments that we've put in for your area. We have $1 million put in for Kahaluu Regional Park, improvements to the Makai side of Kahaluu Regional Park. As you may know, the Makai side has for years been in a state of puddled situation, and many access that area to do their paddling and different activities on that side of the park. And so our office did work with Department of Planning, Department of Parks and Recreation, and they did do an improvement to the area this past year and did a better surface improvement with gravel. But after looking at what happens when it rains, we are aware that the gravel situation is not going to be a long-term fix for that area. So we are putting in the money to have that area repaved and striped so that it's a safe area for people to park. And the area adjacent to that gravel parking lot of the Kahaluu Regional Park, you may or may not know, is also owned by the city. It's a Department of Parks and Recreation parcel. So we're looking to clear that area of the California grass and different just overgrowth that's there to make it once again a beautiful feature of Kahaluu Regional Park and make it a passive park. So we're looking just to improve that whole side of Kahaluu Regional Park. So it once again comes back to a usable and a safer place. As we know, within that overgrowth, there tends to be issues of homeless and other situations of happening in that overgrowth. So we're looking to improve that area. We are also reappropriated funding for the planning and design of a transfer station in Kahaluu for $500,000. And again, the stream and floodway maintenance program at $5 million. Moving on to projects that are already underway, Kualoa Regional Park Maintenance Facility. If you're familiar with Kualoa Regional Park, there's been that maintenance facility that went in a woeful state of disrepair. It looked like it was basically falling apart. That maintenance facility shed is the base yard for parks throughout Windward and the North Shore from Kualoa to Sunset Beach. So it was in much needed repair for a very long time, and we're happy to say construction began in January, and it is set to complete in October. So that project is underway, and Kualoa Regional Park will soon have a brand new maintenance facility. I want to also highlight, we've been working with the Waiāhole community with the Waiāhole Valley Road parking issues right there at the beginning of Waiāhole Valley Road due to the popularity of Waiāhole Poi Factory. And I've been very impressed on how the community and business has come together to jointly try to work on a solution to address the parking issue there. Of grave concern is that it does turn into a health and safety issue when there are so many cars parked on both sides of Waiāhole Valley Road, turning Waiāhole Valley Road basically into one way in and one way out. So if a first responder needed to access and get up the Waiāhole Valley Road, it would be very difficult for them to get through that area. So we're looking at different ways to address that situation. We do have a work order already to paint the boundary lines of Waiāhole Valley Road, because one of the issues is that many who are parking there need to be aware of where the road starts. And so when HPD comes to enforce the parking situation there, HPD can clearly see and identify where the road starts and let the cars know how far into the roadway they are. And there's also a possibility, depending on the decision from the community, to do no parking on one side of Waiāhole Valley Road. So that is under discussion as well to make sure we keep that area clear and passable. I did also want to highlight Hauʻula Resiliency Hub. Many of you may have heard about our work to establish a Resiliency Hub in Hauʻula. That Resiliency Hub is really to address the issue of having no confirmed shelter space in the area on the Windward coastline. So Hauʻula Resiliency Hub is really going to be a first of its kind to address the lack of support for emergency shelter and other support services to the Windward coastline community areas. So $2.7 million has been appropriated for the plan, design, and construction of the Resiliency Hub. And through our work with the Office of Climate Change, Resiliency, and Sustainability, Resolution 21-76 was approved to transfer $82,856 as a local match to develop an action plan for resiliency hubs throughout the city and county of Honolulu. So I do know that there is interest in other communities such as Kahaluu for a resiliency hub in your area. So we will definitely be working with you to see how we can work with you on that as well. So I'll wrap up my portion of my update at this point in time and then open up for any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, and we'll move now into our question and answer segment. So if you do have a question or a comment, please put it in the chat and we'll ask it to our electeds who are here with us. The first question we got was from Elizabeth, and her comment was, I worry about the stream draining situation. There are many times full of trees and other foliage. Is there any system to keep these clean so water can actually drain? I'll pose that to the three that we have on here, Senator, Rep, and Council Member.
Let me take a first crack at that. The stream clearing is a major concern. Without any real easy answers, the city and county have permission, a kind of pre-permission to manage 92 streams that they manage. So they can go in and clear the streams without too much permitting issues or response times. They are probably understaffed for the task at hand, and they maybe don't get there as often as they should, but they do more work than people realize for streaming. And I'm not trying to step on Heidi's thunder there, but I just wanted to go on the general speak of this. And there are thousands of small streams around the island and around the state. And the responsibility lies with the landowner, because the streams are not necessarily public lands. They're parts of private lands and or state or county lands. So it is a problem with all of the state lands, because most of the watersheds upstream are state conservation lands. And the Department of Land and Natural Resources is not sufficiently funded and geared up to do what they probably should be doing. So that is something that we have to go back and try to work on, I think collectively, to get them more funding. There are measures in the legislature this year to boost funding for DLNR. I think it probably has to be a higher priority, but priorities then fight with the healthcare and homeless and building roads, and so it's not a real easy part. And here's the other part I want to mention is that because most of the streams are privately owned, it's difficult to get individuals to manage the streams that go through their properties, or the landowners. And it could be problematic if we start turning in our neighbors and going more aggressively on that. So one thought I had just as a conversation starter was, we have these clean the beaches. We have a clean the beach day, and we have a clean this, and adopt a highway. We have this. Maybe we need to put more effort into community projects to clear streams periodically, maybe annually. We get volunteer groups and organizations to go out and lend that helping hand, and then rebuild that community involvement in the streams. And I think that might be a more effective way based on the circumstances in there. So that would be my contribution to this discussion.
Thank you, Senator. Rep or council member, any other comments?
I'll just add that I actually had a bill this session that I introduced, House Bill 1332, which required the Department of Land and Natural Resources to regularly maintain trails and streams that are under the state's jurisdiction. The bill got one hearing and then it died because DLNR obviously doesn't have the funding to do that. But what I think it did was it sparked the conversation about how can we partner with DLNR to do that. And, people who have reached out to me about stream cleanups or, issues with streams, we've tried our best to figure out who the appropriate landowner is. And, I have to say that we've worked really well with Councilwoman Tsuneyoshi's office, and I see Mike Sakata on there, and they've just been really responsive, as well as working with our new council member in Kaneohe, Esther Kia'aina, to really address these issues. And it really is a partnership, because it's not, oftentimes a stream will be owned by the state, then the city, then maybe a private owner, then the city. I mean, so there's multiple parts of it. And the challenge also is that a lot of times, depending on the stream, you have to get permission to bring in the Army Corps of Engineers, which they need to bring in their huge equipment to get down into the canal area and clean out everything. And so that takes a really long time for permitting. And so my suggestion would be, as for right now, until we figure out a more permanent solution, is if you have a stream that's in your area, you're concerned about it, reach out to one of us so we can at least know where that stream is. We can put the request in, we can kind of follow up with the individuals and the departments who do the maintenance of the streams, and then we can make sure that we try to get it cleared out as much as possible. Because right now we don't have a long-term solution, and that's something that we do need to work on as a collaborative effort. But as far as for the interim, I think, reaching out to any one of us, and then we'll work with each other to figure out who's kind of take the lead on it so that we can address those issues.
Thank you, Rep. Councilmember?
Yes, thank you. I just want to say that this most recent issues that we've been through really brings to mind the issues of what was just expressed earlier, some of the confusion about who owns what, whose kuleana is what, is that state, is that city, is that a privately held area of the stream. So attached to my resolution 21-77, I'm going to use these resolutions, and when I do introduce the one to request for the state to address their streams and floodways, that attached to these resolutions will be a list of what is owned by the city, and under the resolution for the state, what is held under kuleana of the state. Because as we know, the city and the state should be working together to make sure that we're both addressing where our responsibilities lie. And as we know, although streams, as we know, start from run Mauka to Makai, come from the mountain and head all the way down to the ocean as they were meant to do. Throughout that length of the stream from Mauka to Makai, there's many different land ownerships, but as we know, the choke points end up under the bridges and that are owned by either the state or the city. So my focused attention moving forward immediately is to make sure that those choke points underneath the bridges and in those areas that we know were also always supposed to be floodways, such as irrigation ditches and other areas that we know the city and state had always were supposed to maintain for flood mitigation efforts, are cleared. So both resolutions that I'm going to introduce are going to have a list of what is owned by city and what is the kuleana of the state. And then when it comes to privately held streams, there's an issue of helping landowners to know how they could even go about doing work in the stream. I think there's a lot of confusion about how they go about being permitted to be able to do the work they can do. And once we clear up that, those questions that private landowners have about how do I, even if I wanted to clear the stream in front of my private property, how do I do that? If you reach out to our offices, we can help in letting you know what steps you need to take to be able to do that. And as we saw through the issues that we've had through these this most recent flooding situation, the community comes out in strength when things like this happen. I'm just overwhelmed by how the communities came together, community groups and individuals really rallied together to help each other, cleared homes, dug out mud and debris that the government wasn't able to do. So I'm sure that if we get the information out to property owners who want to clear their streams, I'm sure we can find a way to help them do what they need to do. So I think we just have to look at a very comprehensive way of looking at this issue and have focused attention to do what we can do. And for sure, focus on those choke points, which is under bridges and in floodways that we know need to be maintained for the water to flow out to the ocean as it's supposed to.
Thank you. And before we leave this particular question, last night as well as tonight, I know there are a lot of people wondering how do they find out what's state property, what is city property, and what's private property. Senator, do you have that address that you shared last night, or the website? Because I think that was a valuable source that many people aren't aware of.
Yeah, there's a useful visualization webpage called that allows you. You can look at the island of Oahu and zoom around, scroll around, zoom in, zoom out, and identify each parcel. So you can basically identify who owns nearly any piece of land on this island. And it is at a website address gis.highcentral.com. High like HICENTRAL. So gis.highcentral.com. And it's a great little tool for tracking things down. You can look at the public records, you can look at permits, you can find out who owns the land and the zoning. You can check all of that through that site. It gives you a good start.
Thank you. We're going to stay on the topic of the flood, and we have a question from Winnie, and Winnie's question is, could stream clearance be a community project?
I think so. I think that what was mentioned, I think Heidi mentioned and Lisa, one of the big problems is if you try to bring in heavy equipment, then you run into clean water permitting restrictions. And that's where something that we probably need to do some sort of advanced directives on what is and is not acceptable, like a programmatic EIS that the city did. It might be harder with a bunch of individual owners though. But the community, if the community bands together and gets in there with the manpower and a little ingenuity, I think that's probably going to render the best bang for the buck. That's my thought.
Rep or council member?
Yep, so on the city side, we do have an adopt a stream program. So attached to the resolution 21-77 will be information about the adopt a stream program. And also with regards again to the streams and floodways that the city owns. So happy to field any questions from anyone who wants to help to coordinate efforts to do work in the city stream. And as I mentioned earlier, if there's private landowners that feel that they really want to have some attention for areas under their responsibility, if you contact our office, we can just try to help you get through the process of figuring out what you need to do to be able to do that work. And I do believe right now the timing is really ideal. It's top of mind for many of the departments within the city, Department of Planning and Permitting and others that will help, definitely be able to help us figure out a way to allow for that work to be done.
Representative, any comment?
Nothing else to add. I think Senator and Councilwoman did a great job.
Thanks. Okay, our next question is still on the same topic, and the question is from Jordan, and she wrote in the chat, or Jordan wrote in the chat, alongside stream flooding, a big concern in my community of Waiāhole Homestead are the big albizia trees that can potentially cause big problems with electric poles and wires. Trees are beginning to grow closer to our streets and electricity. What can be done?
This is a big problem. I've put in bills in the past to require neighbors to take care of dangerous trees. Albizas, as we know, grow enormously. And when they're on the property line and hanging over your property is basically useless because it's too dangerous to be hanging out underneath them, doing what you need to do. So we've tried for several years, I tried to move some legislation to grant authority to basically force your neighbors to take care of the dangerous trees that straddle across the property line. We haven't been effective getting that through. So it's a similar problem to the stream. It's basically the same problem as the stream clearances. How do you get people to responsibly manage their resources?
If I could speak to that, with the Waiāhole Valley and the albizia trees, our office has been out looking into that situation. Many of the parcels that seem to be overrun by albizia is actually under the jurisdiction of HHFDC. So we have had meetings and letters to HHFDC. There have gone out to contract to find a contractor to try to remove some of the albizia trees. So they're under contract to do part of the work. But as we know, albizia is so invasive that it spreads very rapidly. So we do need to find a long-term solution to eradicate albizia, especially in areas where they seem to really come in so quickly and grow so quickly, which is the case in Waiāhole. So we are already in conversations with HHFDC. And so we can provide updates as we hear when that contract for removal of some of those trees, those that are of most concern growing next to, like you said, the electrical wires and things, when they'll be removed. So if you want to contact our office for specifics on that, we have that.
And also regarding the, the DLNR does not have a dedicated tree maintenance division. It's something, again, I put in as an idea, as a program in years past. And we're going to try it again this next year. Call it a tree corps or something, but there should be dedicated people that work for the state land management folks that are continuously, clearing hazardous areas and trees and streams and roads and valleys and albizia. So if we had a dedicated crew, that's their job to do it, and not just when we call the contract tree service, I think we'd go a long way to getting there as well. So again, it's an ongoing challenge.
Thanks, Senator.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing. I was looking up a previous law. I remember 2 years ago, we did pass a law related to albizia trees. It was where if there is an albizia tree on a vacant property next door to you, so say no one lives in the lot next to you, there's a giant tree and you don't know who can cut it down because the owner isn't there or you can't get in contact with the owner, this new law that we passed in 2019 allows, with of course certain steps that have to be taken, but allows you or someone you contract or whatever to go into that vacant lot to then address the tree issue and cut down those albizia trees. So the law, I'll just pull it up. It was SB 464 in 2019. It ended up being Act 13 of 2019. So that was a law we did to address some of the albizia tree problems. But I think as Councilwoman said, you know, if there is a issue with someone who has albizia trees, you know, reach out to our office and we can try to help, you know, figure out if it's on state land, city land, if it's with HHFDC, as most of Waiāhole is, we can contact those departments to figure out how we can address those issues.
Thanks, Rep. Marie wrote in the chat, and this is her comment. For our state leaders, I understand funding for HHARP, and I'm assuming that's the Hawaii Hazards Awareness and Resilience Program, a major effort to help our communities be aware of and be resilient to disaster situations is being cut in the budget. What, if anything, do we have for financial help to grassroots work in either state or county budgets for emergency preparation and response? So it's a budget question. Maybe we'll start with Senator or Rep.
The budget, we're actually getting a briefing on the Senate on the budget. The Senate is getting a briefing tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Budgets are really opaque documents. There's thousands of pages of stuff moving around, and it's hard to get a good read on what's in there. It just came across from the House last week, and so the Senate is now working on it. And I have heard that that program is in jeopardy of funding. So I'll be asking that question tomorrow. A lot of the programs were really on the chopping block. I mean, everything was getting cut up until recently. The economic recovery has been better than anticipated. And the federal monies, I think, have done a huge assist to help plug some holes. And this may still be one of the holes that we got to look at. And maybe Rep. Kitagawa knows more about the budget as it came across. But like I said, it's a complex document.
Yeah, I don't have specific information about that issue or that funding. And as Senator mentioned, you know, the budget is a very long document. So I would need to go in there and research and see, and then try to figure out and talk to some of my colleagues to figure out about that. So I don't have an answer for you right now, Marie. But, you know, we can always look at, I mean, this year, of course, is a very difficult year with anything related to the budget, just because of the situation we're in. And I'm hopeful that by, you know, next year, as we start to see our economy recover, we'll be able to include back a lot of the things that we had to kind of cut out. But of course, you know, we can always be in communication and talk about it and figure out, you know, can we maybe do a separate bill for that? If there's like a certain specific need, you know, maybe we can ask for a separate appropriation outside of the budget through a bill. So there's options, and we can continue to talk about that as we come into the next legislative session.
Councilmember, I know you did mention that you did put some appropriations in the city budget for this type of resiliency efforts. Can you maybe just highlight again what those budget numbers were?
So with regards to the Hau'ula Resiliency Hub, that's specific to the build out of the Resiliency Hub. It's $2.7 million for the plan and design and construction of that Resiliency Hub in Hau'ula, but there is also $82,000 that was a match to federal monies to develop Resiliency Hub action plans throughout the city and county, which could include Kahaluu. But in regards to specific questions as far as community grassroots efforts to have emergency preparedness activities going on in the community, when we have our recap meeting on April 5th, I'd be happy to ask the city's Department of Emergency Management and to ask them how we might be able to help facilitate discussions on working with community groups in how they establish their community readiness, emergency readiness plans, because I think this is again top of mind for the city right now. That meeting on Monday, April 5th is really going to talk about a comprehensive way the city can work. And one of the ideas that came up is to review the community's emergency readiness plans and tie that into how the government's emergency management plans and how those overlap. Because as we know from the situations that unfolded during the floods, the community's ability to respond and to know what to do in the case of emergencies is as important, if not more important, than what the government comes in and does, because communities really come together in amazing and miraculous ways. So we can contact you, Marie, to see if there's a possibility that the city can somehow fill that gap should that funding not come back on the state side, to see how we might be able to just to work together for action for community readiness plans and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marie.
We're going to move to the topic of tourism. You know, with COVID numbers, well, it was going down. Now it's slightly on a rise, but we're seeing more and more visitors come back to our islands. Angelica's question and comment was, with tourism coming back, the traffic backup on Kamehameha Highway, specifically near Laniakea Beach, is going to be an issue as time goes on. Are there any plans to address this?
Yes, we've been fighting that for 16 years. There's been a lot of foot dragging by the agency responsible for it. They are presently, the Department of Transportation is presently doing an environmental study to compare 4 options. One, leave it as it is. 2, to build guardrails on both sides of the road and just block parking everywhere. 3, to to leave the road where it is and to allow parking on the city parkland. Now the city has done its part to fence off the area there on the former ranch land. So the city has been cooperative in doing its bit to make the parking available. We're still waiting on the Department of Transportation to either be approved or to get going on fixing that part of what is a compromise solution. There is a 4th option, which would be a mild realignment and allow parking on the Mackay side of the road. So the DOT is presently analyzing all of those 4 options, and hopefully they will move forward at least with the 3rd option that I described, because that was a compromise solution with some plaintiffs in a lawsuit, and it's something that could be done rather expeditiously and would probably have some positive impact. So let's hope that happens no matter what they do with these other long-term studies.
Thank you, Senator. Representative or council member?
I just want to say that definitely is an issue. Senator Riviere and myself have been in numerous meetings with DOT, stakeholders, with the community. So we have come down to options on the table. Like Senator said, the city has come to the table and said we're willing to help in any way that we can, and have done some fencing of the area that we know is under our responsibility, and have done taken different actions to be ready to move in whichever way that DOT decides to move forward. So we're ready to come together once that finalized plan, because of its proximity of course to the ocean and in the special management area and high water mark and all of those things come into play. But we're definitely still trying to make sure that we find some kind of solution as numbers do start to come back, and traffic will definitely get worse.
Rep, I know that isn't in your district, but you know, the topic of tourism is I think one that affects all of us. Maybe if you wanted to share your thoughts, you know, with the amount of tourism and visitors coming back, what do you think can be done to ensure that we build back tourism better than what we had prior to this COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, I think definitely the topic of tourism is one that we've had a bunch of discussions on. Of course, I think what the pandemic allowed us to do is sort of do a reset. And, you know, our numbers pre-pandemic were just really unsustainable for Hawaii and for our environment. And so as we start to open tourism back up, I think it's important to remember that we don't want to get to those type of numbers. And we really don't want to rely on tourism as sort of the foundation of our economy. We really need to look at how do we diversify? And we've had a bunch of conversations about that in the legislature this year. But one bill that I introduced, which didn't get a hearing, but there was also another similar bill in the House that did move forward, was looking at taxing and increasing a tax on rental cars, because we know that most times rental cars are done by tourists. And so it was adding a rental car fee on it so that tourists would have to pay an additional amount to rent a car. And then that funding would go into a sort of a pot that would be used to help maintain and sustain our environment and our natural resources. And I think those kind of conversations are important because really, you know, we don't want to tax our own community and the people and the residents who live here as much as possible, but we should be taxing, I think, our tourists who come and are enjoying this place that we all call home. So little things like taxing rental cars or looking at other ways to sort of have tourists pay their fair share into helping us maintain our environment and our natural resource is an important conversation. And so those are conversations that we are having now in the legislature. And so, you know, I'm sure we're going to have them next year as well. And we'll continue to have similar kinds of discussions too.
Thank you. You know, I don't see any more questions in the chat. So we'll move to some closing remarks. We'll start with Senator, followed by Representative Kitagawa, and then on to Councilmember Tsuneyoshi. So Senator Riviere.
Thank you. I want to make two announcements so that folks are aware of upcoming events and activities. The Keep the North Shore Country, speaking of wind turbine setbacks, Keep the North Shore Country has been fighting a lawsuit regarding the protection of endangered species, such as the Opeapea, the Hawaiian hoary bat, regarding the new latest wind turbine project called Napua Makani up in Kahuku. So it's been a 4-year legal battle through the process, and it is now at the Supreme Court. Oral arguments will be heard on Thursday, April 1st at 2 p.m. Oral arguments usually go really quickly, maybe a half hour or so. So if anybody's interested in the future of that wind project and its efforts to protect or not protect adequately endangered species, that will be available at 2 o'clock on the 1st on youtube.com/Hawaii courts. So check that out if you have any interest in that at all. There are other lawsuits that are pending. Again, but I really support Heidi Tsuneyoshi's measure to increase the setbacks. We have well, I'm a member of Keep the North Shore Country, so that you know that. And Keep the North Shore Country is also challenging the turbines because while the law says they have to be set back 1 foot for every foot they are tall, 2 of the turbines are less than 300 feet away from the property line. They're 568 feet tall. So they have to be at least that far back, but they're not. They're 275 feet away from the property line. So that court case is presently in the circuit court. There is another challenge that's coming up on May 7th regarding Napua Makani, so regarding the power purchase agreement and the price of electricity that they're selling. So there's still a lot of issues that are going on with wind turbines, with setbacks, with community health issues and such. So that's pending. My second announcement is there is a large military investment being proposed for the state of Hawaii. It was budgeted by Congress. The military stepped back from it, but now there's a lot more momentum to build this massive radar missile tracking system in Hawaii. And it was previously proposed at either a site above Kaena Point or 2 sites above Kahuku. And presently, the Missile Defense Agency is considering Barking Sands on Kauai and 1 site above Kahuku. It's a big, high energy using system that will affect aviation. It'll take up 160 acres for development. It's extremely unpopular in Ko'olauloa. Nobody wants this thing in that area. It's just an inappropriate location. It possibly would be better sited next to the missile range at Pacific Missile Range Parking Sands. So if anybody would like to comment or know more about it, go to MDA, Missile Defense Agency, mda.mil, and go down about halfway down the page and you'll see a link to the information for the radar system that's being proposed in Hawaii. Comments for the system are welcome until April 12th. So if you have anything you would like to share on that, please submit your comments before April 12th. And that's the two announcements I wanted to make in addition to what we talked about tonight. Our phone number is always rings and we answer it and we get back to people. So feel free to call us if there's ever any additional questions, 586-7330. Send us an email. I think, working with Rep. Kitagawa and Councilmember Tsuneyoshi, I think we're a really, really cooperative team. We're always trying to get together and not point fingers or say that's their problem, not ours. So I think, we work hard together for you guys, and just reach out to us in any time that we can help. And thank you for taking time out of your busy evening to join us tonight. Mahalo.
Thank you, Senator. Next, we'll go to Representative Kitagawa.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who's come tonight. Really appreciate your presence here. I just wanted to mention, I saw a comment from Abigail in the chat box about her issue with the roosters being on ag land across the stream. And so I had sent, hopefully you got it, Abigail, an email either yesterday or today with information from the Department of Health, but we'll continue to work with the city because it crosses both into Councilwoman Tsuneyoshi's area, because the home that's causing the issue with the roosters is in that area, as well as Esther Kia'aina's, who represents the area that you live in. And we'll also fill in Senator Riviere on it as well. We can send him those emails so he's aware. But feel free to reach out to us if you have continued questions about that. And I just wanted to address that because I did see that and we didn't talk about that during the town hall. But I also wanted to just highlight a couple of things which I forgot to do in the beginning. I wanted to share some good news about capital improvement project funds that are going to be coming to our district. They are now included in the budget and hopefully they stay in there. That's the plan, but they are budgeted for. So Ahui Manu Elementary School will be getting some funding to assist with their ADA accessibility. Last year they got some funds, but we'll be adding about $300,000 onto that they needed to complete the ADA accessibility project going on at their school. Kahaluu Elementary School will also be getting additional funds this year. They needed more in addition to what they got last year to finish the renovation of their restrooms in one of their buildings. So they'll be getting $550,000. The Kaneohe Elementary School, which is outside of where most of you live, but they'll be getting about 1.12 million for a portable classroom that they need. They have a lot. They're probably the most populated elementary school in the 96744 area. So they really are kind of don't have enough classroom space. We'll also be getting some funds for the Hawaii State Hospital, which will be opening their new building completely soon. They're starting to, it's finished, but they're starting to move into that. Winter Community College will be also getting some funding for their Agri-Pharmatech bioprocessing facility, and the Waiāhole bridge replacement project, which has already been in the works, but they will be getting an additional $9 million to finish that or to work on that. So that is great news. We know that that bridge needs a lot of help. So it is budgeted in our capital improvement projects to add $9 million to that project. So I just wanted to share that good news with all of you that our community will be getting some funding, much needed for our schools and our communities. And then the other thing I just wanted to highlight is for those of you who may not get it, my office sends out an email every Friday, sometimes more if there's important information, time-sensitive information that we want to share. But we really try to include as much information as possible that we think will help the community. So we do some updates related to COVID that we find out. We do community events, community updates. We share information If you're part of an organization that you want the community to know about, we will share that information for you. So we send that out every Friday. So if you would like to join our email listserv, please just send me an email at repkitagawa@capital.hawaii.gov, and we can add you to that list. You can also feel free to call our office. So my office number is 586-8540, and we'll be happy to assist you with any issues you might have. And I just wanted to thank Senator Riviere for putting on and organizing, taking the lead on this town hall, and Councilwoman Tsuneyoshi for being here and for just her collaboration with the city. We really enjoy working with her office, and also Jacob for moderating tonight. And thank you again to everyone for joining us and spending your evening with us tonight.
Thank you, Rep. And my apologies to Abigail. I did have her question starred, but we got caught up in the stream conversation. So my apologies goes out to you. We'll go last with Councilmember Heidi Tsuneyoshi.
Thank you, Jacob. I just want to end just by saying thank you again to Jacob, Senator Riviere, and Representative Kitagawa for being here, and for all of you who are on tonight. Your investment in your community and your work in getting the information that you need to further support your community is really amazing. And it is all of us coming together to deal with the issues that are have been going on, and we'll definitely have to continue working collaboratively on all the things that we have before us. But I do believe having a strong community is a basis for everything that we need to do. Moving forward, you are the foundation for everything that we do. And you all are really the inspiration for everything that we do, because seeing the way communities come together is just very, very inspiring. So thank you to all of you for being here tonight. Look forward to working with all of you. Our office number is 768-5002, 768-5002. So feel free to call us if there's anything we can assist you with. I represent Council District 2, which we start actually in Mililani Mauka, and then we come through Wahiawa, and then we go through the North Shore, wrap around the Windward Coastline, and go through until Kahaluu. So all that area falls under District 2. So if there's anything that you have questions about for that, please feel free to call us. And again, thank you all for being here tonight. And please take good care, and hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you. And to all of you, thank you for joining us. A copy of this town hall will be posted. It's streaming on Senator Riviere's Facebook, Councilmember Tsuneyoshi's Facebook, and we'll also make sure that the YouTube link goes out to all of you. Have a great evening, stay safe, and we will see you folks soon. Aloha.